Hey everyone, the world is in a crisis, we have an international trade war, and of course we want to know who needs marketing right now and how can marketing leaders adjust to the current state in the world.
Exactly. So Ben, if a CMO is walking into Monday's stand-up, what 3 things are changing in the world right now should he look at to decide whether to tighten his budget, hold his budget, or even go full out?
What we see in a lot of industries at the moment is that potential buyers are careful. So it's definitely much harder to close deals. It's much harder to actually write a quote that is really attractive, where the client or potential buyer says, oh, that's a no-brainer, I'll close that. Of course, if the offering is incredible, then that's a no-brainer, but there's a lot of competition in most of the markets, so that's a lot harder. And I think that also brings most marketing leaders into a situation where every euro or dollar investment in marketing channels needs to be very well argued. So you want to ensure that you only advertise for potential buyers. You don't lose 99% by just going with a broad campaign and seeing if there's any result. Also, testing is a lot reduced at the moment. So what we saw during the pandemic or the year after was money was super cheap. Everyone was trying new things, and when you look at the Bullseye framework, there was probably a not very sustainable, heavy outer circle in the Bullseye framework. So there was a lot of investment that went through in these channels or strategies that have no proof of concept. So I think to sum this thing, it's really healthy that at the moment most marketers have to reconsider the strategy that was working like some years ago.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess we're maybe slowly moving towards that direction again. Where do you see like macroeconomic trends or maybe decisions on interest rates? How do they translate to the marketing world? So, for example, this week, the Fed in the US cut interest rates again. Where do you see this translate to the marketing world and marketing spending?
So in general, when you have low interest rates, then of course money is cheap.
Yeah.
It means that companies are trying to grow, they get cheap money, they can actually buy growth from the money they get. So that's for marketing a good thing, because it means that we can all be a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't want to go too deep into these macro things because I'm not a real expert in it.
Yeah, of course.
But there's a clear correlation between interest rates and how the mood is on the market.
Yeah.
And at the moment, there are multiple challenges. So one is of course the fact that the interest rates are not as low as they have been 4 years ago, but also we have uncertainty in international collaboration, and especially when you look at enterprise clients, and enterprise clients, they make probably the biggest bucket in spendings in advertising. They sometimes have really big problems. There are taxes that they have never seen before. They need to negotiate with sometimes ultranationals, and I think that's a bigger challenge to tackle. It's not something that we can do in the marketing, but it's super exciting to see how to find solutions for that. I think many companies are now focusing more on their home markets again, so on the national markets, and not trying to win clients across the globe.
Yeah, for sure. I guess one of the crises at the moment is not just an economic, but also kind of a cultural one. How should a marketer tackle these uncertain times where making political statements or being too woke can can really create risk for your company.
I think that is freaking difficult for some companies. When you look at international consulting firms, for example, let's take Boston Consulting Group, they had to remove so many of their, I think they had a really big program for, what was it? Diversity and sustainability. And I think they had to remove a lot of that because otherwise they wouldn't get any contracts from the government in the US. And I totally understand that they do it because they are actually threatened to do it. If we have to change something or otherwise we can fire half of the staff, then we would also do that. So that's really, I don't think that's a good development. So to some point, to some extent, you have to follow all these regulations. And when you benchmark how much could you adjust the marketing, I think you have to sometimes fully adjust it. So when you look at their marketing 6 years ago, BCG was promoting that heavily.
For sure.
We are promoting sustainability, we're promoting diversity, and now, if they have to close these programs, then of course they have to stop promoting it. So,
But don't you think there's also value in standing up to that, or like really owning it and saying, no, we are about this, and maybe the US market is not as relevant for us? I think there's a lot of European companies that are currently doing this. Of course, BCG, global company, main market is US, not an option for them, but for smaller or European companies.
I think there's always an opportunity in doing that. So also for BCG, I bet they would have won some more clients that are, let's say, more attracted by these programs, of course, but I'm sure they did a very good calculation in whether this is a good decision or not. And if it would be net positive, I think they would have also continued with these programs, because that's just my opinion, but I think that these programs can be really helpful for society. And especially when society is doing well, these programs, they should be promoted.
Also for the company and a team, right? A diverse team is usually better.
Yeah, but to think you are forced to do that, and I think that wasn't an easy decision. So okay, so let's maybe dive back into the marketing topic. In light of all these crises, where do you see the balance between brand and performance marketing? Should brands currently or companies currently invest more into the brand, or should they still tackle performance marketing? Performance marketing is, so let's take the classic search channel, for example. I think it's great if it's profitable. If it's profitable, then I would recommend to invest heavily in this channel, and especially in a period where liquidity might not be perfect for many advertisers or for many companies. These channels are great. If you can invest $1 and you get back $2, that should be a focus. Yes. But when you look at the risk profile of a company, and a company only does search, or let's say they only do Meta, or only do LinkedIn, well, but LinkedIn in general is good for brand building. So let's say they only do search, and you have a heated market, so there's a lot of competition, then this can be the biggest threat for a company. The CPCs can explode, and the result can be they don't have a strong brand. Let's just take a company that was not doing any brand marketing for 5 years. They only did PPC and they only did search. That's a special case, because when you look at Meta in combination with search, it's already much better. But let's say they only did search, and now the CPCs are exploding. It's very likely that when you have, there are also studies that prove that when you have two companies and one company did brand marketing, the other one was only focused on lower funnel CPC. Maybe 5 years ago, the company that only did lower funnel CPC looked better when you looked at the fundamentals. Because they had no investment up front to build up the brand. Because the brand return on investment is typically worse. But when the competition rises and you see that the CPCs are increasing, at some point it can be that Google search is no longer profitable. And I have seen this many times already. In many client collaborations we see that, and we are always communicating this very clearly that it can become a big problem. Now these companies, let's look at them today. One of the brands was constantly investing in brand marketing, the other one only in lower funnel. And now the CPCs are exploding. What will happen? So,
well, they're both going to have extremely exploding costs, and buyers will then usually tend to go for the one with a higher brand value, so to speak. Definitely.
So that's exactly the case. You have one company who is well known and the other one is not known, and CPCs are so expensive that both of them will at some point probably say, well, we are not interested in this channel. So the one with the brand has a strong benefit. Also, the conversion rates are typically higher. So my advice is, in a crisis, to not underestimate how bad it can get when you completely remove brand marketing. So sometimes I see the strategy that a company says, well, we don't have enough budget for this year for brand marketing, so we focus only on performance. And then they look at the channels and say, okay, LinkedIn was not really strong in return, so we are only focusing on Google Ads. And I've seen these cases really. Over the last years, I've seen them many times. Mostly driven by CFOs. I mean, I think CFOs, they do at some point a very good job, but understanding what's the impact over 6 months, what's the impact for 12 months, that's where CMOs and CFOs should collaborate very closely, because turning down all these brand building channels will at some point completely damage the business. It's 100% sure.
So that would be a one takeaway for a CMO's answer to the CFO comes into his office and says, we need to cut marketing budgets by 20%. That's your recommendation to take him in, and
definitely I would take him in, and I think the decision for the budget split, it should be made in a collaborative way. So if it's only derived from the marketing department, I don't think that's a good idea either. So there should be a good collaboration between the CFO and the CMO, and while CFOs in these, let's say, challenging times will probably push for short-term returns, a good balance is definitely the better way. To say, well, we can focus more on these short-term return channels, but let's take Google. Generating ICPs for B2B high tickets, a lot more difficult compared to LinkedIn, because you just cannot target that well. Maybe if you got the right keywords, it can work, of course, for some businesses, but I would always go for a marketing mix. So turning off a marketing mix is very likely to be the wrong decision. And there's also a good amount of research that shows that in very difficult and challenging times, winners in a competition have often a good marketing mix, and they don't depend on single channels. So that's not something I would give away.
I guess it needs a kind of a mindset shift from many CFOs that still see marketing as a cost center in their company and not as an investment. So I think it needs to be well explained by the CMO, and then that it makes sense that there's a return in the future. Where do you see this investment going, in which areas of brand building, and maybe even creating demand where there wasn't demand before, or where buyers were kind of frozen because of the economic climate, through webinars, through thought leadership and things that are not as direct as before, but kind of create this this demand?
I think demand creation should first of all be challenged for each industry and for each product that a marketer wants to sell, because it's a shiny name for a strategy. It's demand. I mean, some people say demand gen is the format on Google, but that's not the case. That they call it demand gen campaigns, but that's just one single piece of a good demand gen strategy. But a demand gen strategy should only be rolled out when it really fits the business case. So the market should be growing, the solution should be superior, and if you use a demand gen campaign for a service that doesn't fit these criteria, it can still work, but it's very likely that it works. So I see companies that are asking for demand gen strategy because they understand, well, our super lower funnel campaigns are not working at the moment. But it can be that it's really breaking the whole marketing strategy. That's one case. But if it fits well, and that's the other side, and this is something that we have also with our clients. If a demand gen is rolled out very precisely for a specific target audience and it's done properly with a great set of buyer personas, with a great target account list, with a great contact list. So if you really do this properly and you have a superior product or a superior service, then it's definitely the next iteration. So I mean, we call it performance-led account-based marketing. So that's the name that we internally have for that. It's for most B2B clients the best way.
Can you just explain briefly the steps in that strategy?
Performance-led account-based marketing.
Yeah.
So it's called performance-led because you start with the performance marketing channels that have great short-term returns. That's why it's called performance-led account-based marketing. What can these channels be? Google Ads, Microsoft Ads, LinkedIn lead gen forums, Meta lead gen forums, or Meta Ads in general.
Yeah.
So you try to focus on the lower funnel.
Yeah.
If you're not coming up with a completely new product that the world has never seen before, then you should always test these channels first, because they just have a better and quicker deal closing period. If someone searches for a product, you show him the product, he buys the product, it's great.
Yeah.
Your liquidity will increase, your company will do better. So performance-led, that's the first step. You just roll out a performance marketing campaign, step one. If the performance marketing campaign works well, nice. You can try to expand it until to the point where you say, okay, now I cannot utilize it anymore.
Yeah.
If I invest 5,000 euros more, I don't get more clients or more leads from that.
Yeah.
First step. Second step, account-based marketing. So you just go with a classic account-based marketing strategy. You create the target list, you create the targeting, you choose the channels, you approach them, and then you can work with a demand gen strategy. So you're not only using lower funnel. That's the big difference between only doing performance marketing. You really roll it out with building product awareness, building brand awareness, getting some first touch points, potentially creating the first leads. And at the later stage, you can also do outreach. It's possible. But you shouldn't do it in the first place, because if you do it in the first place, you will burn your brand without any... I mean, you can try it, but I would not recommend doing any outreach immediately. So,
and we're kind of throwing around terms here, but so you're saying you're using the demand gen strategy to apply it to the account-based marketing approach of targeting your targeted leads.
So there's a difference when you look at the audience. Typically what you have in the performance marketing region is that the target accounts are sometimes within the audience and sometimes not.
Yeah.
I mean, you can there are some audiences on some channels that you can capture better and others not so good. But in account-based marketing, typically you have very specific target accounts. And reaching these very specific target accounts in the classic performance setup is typically not so easy. So you just take the low-hanging fruits. Maybe the accounts are not perfectly fitted, but you can work with them on performance marketing. And the next step is you focus on all these high-ticket deals that can be closed in enterprise environments, or maybe some very specific audiences. And you have to approach them typically with a demand gen. I mean, maybe you can approach them already with a lead gen campaign, that's possible. But if that's not possible, you have to approach them with a demand gen. You have to explain the product better. You have to build trust. You have to actually promote the offer before you really say, okay, now let's try it for free or whatever is the offer then.
So that's why you recommend it, because it's, I guess, in some way cheaper to only target those accounts in a crisis.
I wouldn't say it's cheaper. I would say it's the only way to address them. You can do a newsletter, of course. You can just send an email. You can do all these, let's say, brutal, rudimental approaches. But if you have a complex product, people will not be interested in reading a lot. So you have to explain it. And for explaining it, you need multiple touch points. There's only a square of 1000 pixels, and you cannot explain a complex product in one of these squares. So you need some touch points to build up the product awareness, and then at the end you can either approach these potential buyers directly, or you can try to generate these leads on the platforms.
Okay. It makes sense. Where do you see, if this is kind of a crisis-proof strategy, where do you see the next year going? Where do you see advertising budgets as a whole going? What's your outlook on the next year?
So in general, one addition, it's not a crisis-proof strategy, but I see that it works for really a lot of clients. So that's a good thing, but it's not completely crisis-proof.
Okay.
But that's always the case when you apply a new strategy. There's a good likeliness for B2B clients with high tickets that this strategy will work, but it's not guaranteed. It can change very quickly from, let's say, a crisis to a boom. Why? Because the welfare at the moment, the global welfare is quite good. So there could be a momentum when we see much lower interest rates and maybe some bigger transactions, some IPOs where everyone's like super bullish. And we saw that during COVID. I remember the first months of COVID, everyone talked about the global economy crisis. A year later, it was the biggest boom we have ever seen. And I think that's one way. But on the other hand side, we still have a lot of startups and companies that are by far not profitable. They are not unicorns, they are zombies. And I think having these zombies in an economy it's not healthy, because they are not really delivering value. They are burning money, they are binding the time of employees.
Talents.
These talents could work for companies that are generating value. So I think that that's like the healthy shrinking of the economy. And I don't know to what distinct this is healthy. Maybe it's 1 or 2 years more healthy that can be. But I don't know that. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you said, the last year we've always heard news of another crash is coming. It keeps on going up. I think actually last month there was the highest IPO activity again in the last 5 years or so. So things are kind of heating up again. But again, if I could see in the future, I'd be a stock trader and not here. But so say the world does turn down and turns more towards a crash. We've talked a lot about different strategies and terms. What are your key kind of takeaways and for a marketer to use in case it goes down further?
So my first advice is definitely to work on a strategy that is tailored for the company.
Mm-hmm.
I often see clients working in a very constant setup that hasn't changed for years, and I think that for an economic crisis, it's really important to think about, okay, what can be our strategy for this time? So that's my first recommendation. The second recommendation is never come up with the idea to only have a single channel as a solution. That is the biggest threat, because once you did that for half a year or a year, coming back to a full stack setup will be so much more difficult, because you don't know the numbers. You don't know, okay, how can we ramp this up? So that's one recommendation, not to do it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the specific channels, I think every company has to find a solution that is tailored. So there's not this performance-led ABM is probably the most promising strategy for a lot of B2B companies, but it's that's just one out of few.
Yeah, okay. No, thanks for those key takeaways and recommendations. I think that was a lot. Thanks for listening. As always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, and see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.